Hey folks, Steve here with Mother Nations in Arms video. I have to apologize. The previous video kind of ended abruptly, but if you watch that previous video, it was an hour and a half long. So I had to cut it somewhere, and I figured I would just do it then. I'm a little disappointed in myself for letting it go that long, but so much of the last video was explanation, right? We talked about the general strategy of the War of the First Coalition right now, at least from the coalition perspective and the fronts. We talked about how movement happens, how combat happens. We had some combat. We also looked at the demoralization check or the morale check. The terms are kind of used interchangeably there, but it's referencing the same thing. Siege combat, and whether or not you choose to reactivate a fortress or not. We covered all of that stuff, which, when you think about it in terms of the operational rules of the game, that's a lot of it, right? You move, you have combat. There's a few other new things we'll hit probably in this video along the way, but we have shown at least one basic demonstration of a lot of those things. And I guess we did have some other movement, but the big battle that Teschen had against Demurrier led to a French retreat and the capture of Lille, though the fortress has not been reactivated due to the somewhat depleted nature of Teschen's force. The Austrians do not want to be caught in a bad situation with a French counterattack later in the year or later in the summer even. But so far, so good. It is still the Austrian impulse, and so we will have, basically we'll have the remaining coalition armies activate in this video, and we'll see how far we get. If I can get that done fast enough, we'll do some of the French activations too, or whatever else comes out of the cup. But the remaining forces for the coalition to be activated are basically the forces that are sort of right there in the center of the screen. So we have Brunswick, we have Clerfayt, that need to head south and take action. And again, I'm still thinking, well, yeah. What I'm trying to understand is I was going to have these guys be reserves, but I might want to pull them up even already. I'm just not sure how fast they're going to go. So this poor guy can move 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I might want to move him up just to be closer up to begin with, but we'll wait to activate these guys until after our main army activations and just kind of see what the lay of the land is um, at that point, I guess. So what we want to try to do is have Clerfayt activate first and have him come down to Metz with the hope that he can fight against Kellerman. If Custine joins him, they'll have a little fight there, and then what that will do is soak off this army and allow Brunswick to come down to Strasbourg. That's sort of the divide and conquer strategy that the Austrians and the Prussians are having a coordinated battle, operational plan. Maybe historically they wouldn't have been so integrated in their decision making here, but it's a war game, so we'll activate Clerfayt. We will do the and it's 2 movement points for the woods or the forest. I think the game uses the term woods. Yeah, woods. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now here's the opportunity for the French to potentially try to intercept into the hex. Now, I don't know if that does any good for anybody to do that right now, because I think the terrain bonus, let me take a look at this. The terrain, if they decide to fight in the woods, is going to limit is going to put a limit on cavalry and artillery superiority bonus, which, the French would probably come out ahead on that. So let's see. They have a detachment. They have 1 artillery. Custine has, okay, so that's 2 artillery compared to 1 artillery. Actually, maybe it is better for the French to try to fight in the woods, because this Austrian set has cuirassiers, which are cavalry, and it looks like neither of these French stacks have any cavalry, so it probably would be a benefit to intercept into the woods if we can, and then fight the battle in the woods. This would nullify, because the artillery superiority of the French is only going to be, would only be a +1 anyway, I think. And there's no other battle diral modifier for woods, so I do think maybe the French would rather fight in the woods, intercept into there, and see if they can make any ground. The one trick is going to be that there is a river separating Custine from this hex, so that is going to be a challenge. Kellerman could probably intercept, and again, the intercepting force is going to get a bonus on the combat, which is always valuable. But either way, if they decide to move the battle from here up to here, that will for sure leave Biron, or Byron, I'm not sure how that's pronounced. I feel like it's probably Biron because it's French. I assume that's what it is. Away from him, and we know that Brunswick is going to come. We know he's going to activate. We know he's going to come down somewhere. So it makes me awfully nervous of what's the right move here. There's almost no great move that could be taken for the French, it feels like, in this situation. It's just the stacks are a bit too advantageous. So let me take a look at, let me take a pause and think through the implications. Now that I'm looking at how many cavalry steps and artillery points are involved, what that's going to look like. Well, I figured things out. I made a mistake. So the Austrians have, and I'm going to destroy my stack here, have a train, and that they took with them, which means they could only have 4 movement points if they want to keep their train. And I think they do, just so that we have the ability to operate a little bit differently. So, boy, this is this is tricky. I think we want to do something else with Clear Fate in this case. We want to keep the baggage train, but trying to head through the Ardennes forest is not going to work. We need to do something else, and we're not going to be able to attack Kellerman. We'll instead go 1, 2, 3, 4, and try to attack this infantry over here. I think that's probably the better move. So we'll just do that. 1, 2, 3. Now, once we move 3, the French could try to intercept, but I feel like, what is this? It's 2 infantry steps against 2 infantry and cavalry. Is that better? Would that do anything? I don't think so. So they're not going to try to intercept. They are going to try to avoid combat when the Austrian stack comes into Boumonville's hex. So we talked about avoidance last time a little bit. It's 2d6. What's interesting is that the book says 2d10, but that can't be right. I think Banania got that one wrong. Let me double check. If it's 2d10, I'm gonna laugh, but I'm reasonably confident that that is not it. So that feels like that's some more errata for the Banania rules. Jeez Louise. avoiding combat. 2d6. Yeah, okay. So Banani has another bit of errata he's got to watch out for, guys. His rules say 2d10 up here, right there. That's supposed to be 2d6. There are no 10-sided dice in this game. So that's another oopsie. The Napoleonic Strategic Curse strikes again. All right, so 2d6, not 2d10. Leader's initiative, which in this case is a 2, so that's at least something. No difficult terrain. The differential with the leader is 1, so it's a +1. And I think that's it. So 2d6, he's trying to get away. He fails to get away. And he's going to have a... Now, dang it. Maybe I shouldn't even have tried to avoid. Maybe I should have just stood ground because he was so unlikely. Maybe I shouldn't have tried because I'm trying to think, like, to get a 10 and only get a +1, it's definitely, you definitely need better than average odds to succeed, and the penalty for it is pretty bad. So you know what I'm gonna do, guys? I'm gonna reverse. I know I already rolled dice, but I don't care. I don't. What I don't want to do, guys, is like demonstrate a mechanic, but like do it only to have it just be a dumb decision. Like it doesn't make sense to me. And actually looking at the odds, I'm being a little flippant because I'm just recording, but I should really think through this. So that's bad on me, guys. It would not have made sense for Beaumontville to try to avoid because he was going to be so bad at it, and it was only going to hurt him to try to get away. We'll give Beaumontville the benefit of the doubt over myself and pretend like I didn't roll the dice and just say that he will stand and fight to defend La Patrie, because that's what we're going to do. Just easier that way, right? All right. So let's do the combat. It's going to be pretty straightforward. We already did the combat from the previous, so we've got 2 infantry steps and a cavalry step here. So 3 combat steps for the Austrians. The French have 2 infantry, so it's 3-2. Now, 3-2, I believe, is going to give us some combat shift bonus. Let me see here. I do think that we're going to be having to round up. So when we look at it being like it's 3-2, is going to round up to 2-1, I think, which is kind of a bummer. A lot of war games will sometimes have, like, you know, a special odds that affect that. 3-2. Yeah, it's kind of it's a bit oddball. So the French are going to get, or I'm sorry, the Austrians are going to get a 2-1 bonus. So they're going to get a +1. But the French, when you do 2-3, rounds up to a 1. So there's no. This is where the math gets weird. I had to do the quick calculate. Okay, 2-3, which is the French value, is rounds up to 1-to-1 ratio, right? Because it's 0.66 repeating, that rounds up to 1. So there's no modifier to the French die roll. They could get a penalty if it was as bad as 1-2, but the math works different when you divide the different way. Because 3 divided by 2 for the Austrians is 1.5, which rounds up to 2. So what I think I'm going to need, and I don't think the game comes with it, I should find a track or something where I can track the combat modifiers for both sides. It's easier when you're playing opposed because both player just calculates and remembers what they're going to get. I've got to remember both, and they could be very different in these situations. So that's just because my brain's only going to work so good, guys. Okay, so I've and done a little bit of work off camera here. Make sure we get that represented in the right hex. So the battle hex being here. So I've done the calculus, and I've even, yes, made my own little helper sheet to keep track of combat modifiers as a checklist and a number, so I know where things are at. This is going to be a pretty bad battle for the French, all things considered. It is going to be a devastating one. So here's where we're at. This is going to be a skirmish battle because the total number of steps is less than 9. The combat modifiers roll up that the Austrians are going to have a +4 to their die roll. The French are going to have a +0. So the Austrians get a +1 from the combat odds being effectively 2-1 after rounding. They are going to get a bonus for Claire Fate's combat bonus. Then they're going to get a cavalry superiority because this French stack has no cavalry. It's a +2. So that's how we get our +4 for the Austrians. The French really don't get any sort of bonus right now. They don't have a lead combat bonus. The lead combat unit for the Austrians are going to be their infantry. They don't want to lose their cuirassiers at this point, which is just a one-step unit. So I expect this to be a very brutal combat for the French. Now, the thing is, because we are using the skirmish table, the amount of losses that can come from the skirmish table are relatively smaller than the others, but this will still likely be pretty gnarly. So we'll go ahead and roll the dice for this. Austrians 2d6 +4. They actually rolled not great. So they rolled a 4 +4 is 8, which is actually a 0. Interesting. Okay. And then the French roll is also an 8, which is 0. Well, I think what we'll do, given that it was equal, we have the potential to have a second round of combat. I think the French lucked out with the Austrians rolling so low, and they've got a killer bonus. I think the French are going to choose to fight another day in retreat. Or do we chance fate again? The thing is, we could have Beaumonville's entire stack get wiped out. Now, because this was a skirmish battle, Beaumonville's corps, I mean, they're not necessarily organized as corps because I don't think the concept of a corps existed yet, but his unit and himself can retreat without a demoralization check. So that morale check is only done on minor and major battles. So this actually has worked out for the French pretty well. And so they will opt to retreat from that hex to Res. And Clairfate has won effectively, but he's out of movement points, right? Because he moved 1, 2, 3, 4. He took his baggage train with him, and he's all done. So a good position, I guess, to have attained, pushing back the French forces, but nothing that truly is a major disruption. And even, I mean, if Kellerman wants to come up behind, he actually has the opportunity to do that. So I think what we'll do next, in light of that, is we're going to go ahead and activate Walmoden and have him go, let's see, what does he have? He has a minor unit and an infantry, so he can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so we're basically providing a flank protection for these guys, and we'll get a marker on him. I wanted him to be more of a reserve, but I think we want to watch our flanks. We could similarly do something like that with Esterhazy, but we'll wait to activate him. And next we'll activate our big stack, which is Brunswick. He's really our most potent coalition stack, I think. I'd have to double check a couple of the Austrian ones, but he's got a whole bunch of good stuff with him. Now, he, just to show again, has, there we go. He's got a baggage train, so he could be slowed down, but he's got 2 steps of cavalry, 2 steps of infantry, 2 more steps of infantry, and a subordinate leader. So this could be, and it's a cavalry leader at that. So this is a very potent, well-rounded stack of 6 steps with plenty of full strength units, which means that they're going to have artillery. So 1, 2, 3 artillery, 2 steps of cavalry, which just, again, in terms of the combined arms capability, it is very good. Now, the trick is he's really got one place he can go. If he wants to be on the offensive, and I'll just move this guy out of the way to show we control the Palatinate as the Austrians, he can go 1, crossing the bridge into Mons, 1, 2, 3, 4 to attack Custine. And it is here where, in the forest, where some of that artillery is going to be limited. But then we have the potential of the French to reinforce. So if it's what is functionally 6 steps, right now Custine has 2, but he could end up having 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the French could, if they manage to march to the sounds of guns, if they can intercept even, it could actually turn against the Duke of Brunswick. But I think we have to try, right? I think the as I mentioned before in the previous video, the coalition has to push on the French. They have to push now while the French are technically at their weakest, because the French are going to balloon up with a levee of men and the French armies. They're going to get better combat abilities over time. If we can shatter the French as best we can, demoralize their troops, then we're in much better position. So we will activate Brunswick. He will do the, 1, 2. Now, Custine's not going to try to intercept here, because if he did, basically he's going to be fighting by himself against an overwhelming force. There's no point in intercepting. And then Brunswick will use his last 2 movement points to enter into this forest hex, the woods hex, with Custine. And now we're going to have to determine the interception die rolls and march to the sound of guns. Okay, I've kind of worked out the situation off camera just to make sure I know how all this should play out. So Brunswick goes to engage Custine. We have an opportunity for interceptions. Only one force can intercept. So we have to choose sort of the order that we're going to do this in. I think the best thing to try will be to intercept with Biron first. He does have cavalry in his force. And all the leaders that are involved here have the same initiative rating, so there won't be any bonuses around that. So it's simply going to be 2d6, not 2d10, as I think the book mistakenly notes. 2d6. When you greater than or equal to 10, we're going to have a +1 due to cavalry being present in Biron's stack. And I believe that is it. Those are the only modifiers that are going to matter here. So we'll give it a shot. I got a 7, +1 is an 8, which is not enough, unfortunately, to intercept. That is too bad. That is too bad. It's interesting that Banania made the mistake twice in having the 2d10 on there. It's very strange because it's 2d6 in the rolls everywhere else. I have to imagine this is simply a mistake on his part, that he is not intending to try to modify the game rules to instead have it be 2d6. I just can't imagine that was the intent. I think it's purely a mistake of um, translating the rules into a different medium or a different file. He just brain fart. So that was a failed interception on Viron. Now we can try with Kellerman. Now he does not have cavalry, so this is just a straight die roll, and that's a failed interception. Okay, so now that the interceptions have been checked and there was a failure, Custine has an opportunity to try to avoid combat. Now, this is again at 2d6, greater than or equal to 10, but he's got the right modifiers. He's got 3 for his initiative. He's also in difficult terrain. So, because forest costs 2 movement points or more, it is considered difficult terrain, which provides us another +1. Does he? And it's only an infantry stack, so we're not going to get much else difference there. So I want to say that this is going to be a +4 to the die roll, if I'm not mistaken. So it seems like, it's interesting, like avoiding combat certainly seems easier in this game than interception. Definitely seems like, yeah, definitely easier to avoid combat. So we'll try it. 2d6 +4. And I rolled a 5. +4 is a 9, which is not enough. So this is kind of interesting. So Brunswick marches his force through the woods to find Custine's forces. Both Biron and Kellerman do not receive word and can't, quickly come to Custine's aid. And even Custine is unable to rally the troops to move away. So there is going to be an engagement. The units, skirmishers or whatever, are starting to engage, and there will be a combat. Now, unfortunately, it's going to be one-sided, but it's not an overrun. So an overrun, I believe, would be at 5-1 odds. Here, he's got 6 steps. Custine has 2 steps. So 6-2 is 3-1. So it's not a complete overrun, but it would be a minor battle. So we'll have to start looking at that. Now, as we start to approach the combat, what we need to start looking at is marching to the sounds of guns. So this is, pre-battle. We look at supply. Everybody is fine for supply at the moment, so no big deal there. But now we have the march to the sound of guns, and we've not done this before. It's kind of interesting that this game has both interception and marching to the sound of guns, but it's where intercepting, you can only have, basically one stack intercept into a friendly hex, or any hex for that matter, and you have to obey stacking. Marching to the sound of guns is a little bit different. It's a second opportunity with a slightly different set of modifiers. So it's, again, Banania has in the book 2d10, but I am almost certain that it is 2d6 everywhere else. So again, another, we'll say, slight mistake on the part of Banania's rewrite. Yeah, 2d6 in the original rule book, so we'll go with that. 2d6, we need 10 or greater again. The combat modifiers of the leaders attempting the march are modifiers. Unfortunately, only Kellerman is going to get a bonus on that. And that's really it. So it's a second chance, but not very good that anything is going to change here, which is unfortunate for the French. This could be a very awful battle where Brunswick gets the central position between 2 other French stacks and can basically, divide and conquer a little bit. against the French, which could be very tricky. So we'll do a, let's see. We'll go ahead and give it a roll. We'll give Biron a chance first. So this is just going to be a straight up die roll as best that I can tell. And he rolls an 8, which is not going to be enough. Let's see. Any other? Yeah, nothing else matters. So Biron is stuck. Kellerman has a better chance with a +1. And he just makes it. So I roll a 9, +1 due to his combat modifier is a 10. So Kellerman's force is able to join Custine's. And what's interesting about this is we can go ahead and just make it one big stack in the hex here, because what the present configuration will be is Custine with a subordinate leader in Kellerman, because Custine's a 3-star, that's allowed. And then we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. So 5 steps. So it being 6 to 5, that's a much better ratio, all things considered, for this combat. So, well, I definitely think I'm going to have to get like an off-map combat board or something with a cool Napoleonic battle background to handle some of this stuff, guys. Okay, so from here now we're going to adjudicate the combat. So with the successful march for guns, let's see, pre-battle. All right, so we look at the battle magnitude, and in this case, because of the march to the sounds of guns, this battle instead goes from a skirmish, because it would have been 8 combined steps fighting, to now much more. We're now at 11, so not enough for a major battle, but still enough for a minor battle, which means demoralization could very well be a factor. I'll go calculate all the odds off camera here to save on time, and we'll talk to it before we start rolling dice. Okay, guys, before we do the die rolling for this combat, it occurred to me that there's something important that really, in my mind, should have been addressed somehow in the rules. So this is, I hate even bringing this up at a critical moment in the campaign, but I think it matters in terms of the game mechanics and the gameplay narrative. So the Prussian player has this card, the Brunswick Manifesto. It is noted as a public card, so like this has to be played. And it is, after this card is played, French forces are not allowed to move into Flanders, Palatinate, or Baden until they win their first victory during a main or minor battle, or the Valmy event is played, which is interesting, right? So it's basically just saying like, hey, and this was the Brunswick guys' manifesto about like shutting down the revolution and all this stuff. And the question is, when is this card played? Well, the standard rule is that public events like this with a public marker on it are played during the diplomacy phase of a seasonal term. So you tend to get new cards in the spring interphase, and then during each season you basically have to play one public card if you have any public cards. So the Brunswick Manifesto card is held by the Austrian player, the Prussian player, the coalition player in this case, because it's really a 2-player game, played solitaire in this situation, or that's how I'm choosing to play it. They have the Brunswick Manifesto, but the rules, the latest 2019 restock rules and the Banania rewrite state that the first season is 1792, and it starts with the activation phase, which means there's not a diplomacy phase where the public event cards are played. That said, I feel Like, this card is supposed to have been played at the beginning of the game. Now, I say that because the historical narrative of the War of the First Coalition was such that France declared war on Austria in April, or I'm pretty sure it was April of 1792, which is technically before the start of the scenario. They tried to invade Flanders, and they got pushed back. And there were a number of generals who were leading those forces, and they ended up kind of being, swapped out for Dumouriez, for Clerfayt, and Biron, and all those guys. So technically, this scenario starts after an initial campaign was conducted in the spring, which was rebuffed and pushed back. And then in July of 1792, Brunswick has this manifesto proclamation. And because the summer turn includes July, it in my brain, I'm like, okay, this only makes sense to play at the very beginning of the scenario as if there were an events phase. And that's not called out in the scenario itself, but I would definitely recommend for anybody else watching this, like, you could interpret this any way you want. If we didn't have this card played right away, it would basically have to wait until the beginning of the autumn turn. And I don't know, depending on where you live, in my mind, like, autumn doesn't start until like October or something, right? It depends what months you consider, what seasons, and when the seasons change or whatever. But like, this is really like, if we had to wait until the autumn turn, this event, this historical event, is not happening until like 2 or 3 months after it actually happened. It happened in the summer, so it should precede all the other campaign stuff that has gone up to this point, making it so that the French cannot, take offensive action on the Rhine front and the Low Countries front until they win their first victory, or they have played Valmy. And again, we've chosen not to have played the Valmy card at the moment. Now, it does put some weird logic, right? Like, well, what if you play the Valmy event um, before this card is played? Uh, does it now mean that you can play this card after Valmy is played, and now you're forcing the French into getting a victory? Or does the play of the Valmy event basically nullify this card's purpose and make it pointless to play? Well, you get around that by saying the Prussian player holds the Brunswick Manifesto card, and it is played immediately as a special rule. It is played immediately at the beginning of the summer operation activation phase, right? That's how it, in my mind, that should work, but there's not really a notation there that indicates that. So for those who are very familiar with French Revolution history, if you disagree with my interpretation, please let me know. I do have a special interest in the topic. I think it's cool and interesting to read about and listen to podcasts about. And to me, it makes sense to say this should be played at the very beginning of the scenario, no matter what, played as a public event, as if it were played in a diplomacy phase, but you do not play a full diplomacy phase. You just play this card, okay? So guys, that's what I'm going to do to make this very clear. I'm going to treat the game as if we had played the Brunswick Manifesto already. So I'm going to remove this card from the game. It is in play. The French haven't gone yet, so it doesn't matter. But what it's basically just saying is, okay, the French can't enter these territories, right? They can't move into there until they win their first victory, or we play Valmy. And that's important because, again, like, it's almost pointless. Like, if you don't play the card, I don't know. It's just a weird situation. And I want to resolve this by looking to the history and let the history guide us, which is the Brunswick Manifesto is played in the summer when events happen in the game order. So at the beginning of the scenario, at the beginning of the season, the Brunswick Manifesto is proclaimed, which, is roughly, in the month of July. We'll say, for game purposes, it was on July like 23rd or 25th or something like that. So the Brunswick Manifesto is in effect. The Allies, the coalition allies, have invaded France effectively at this point, and we have not yet had a French victory, and the Valmy event has not been played. So even on the French activation, depending on how this combat goes, they cannot enter those territories until they win a victory. So it puts the French on sort of this defense first posture, which feels appropriate. So that is the Steve interrupting the normal flow of gameplay to settle a matter. And I would recommend to you, if you're playing this scenario in this game, to do the same as I did. Have the Brunswick Manifesto played before the start of the actual activations, so that restriction for the French is in play, but they have an opportunity to release it when the coalition is uh, done playing their turn. Now, the other thing that you could do as the coalition is you could have a French impulse marker come out first, and then by virtue of having this Brunswick Manifesto, um, the restriction would be like the French can't actually do something, they can't push into enemy territory, and now you've effectively made them lose an impulse marker. So there's a couple of weird strategic considerations there, but I'm not going to focus too much about it because we already decided we want to go first, so we're going to do that, and that's what we're doing. But that's kind of how all those things relate to one another. So again, we're going to treat the Brunswick Manifesto as having been played. The Prussians are now attacking at Custine's stack. The March of Guns has allowed Kellerman to join Custine, so there's now a aggregated French force, a big battle. This was important because if the French actually win this combat, then that means that the Brunswick Manifesto is null and void, and the French can enter. Or this gives us an opportunity to play Valmy, which will then get rid of the Brunswick Manifesto. So in my mind, the Brunswick Manifesto card is not intended to last very long. Its effect is very specific at the beginning of the game, but a French victory will allow that to be overturned. So that's what we're going to do. So anyway, this particular combat, we'll go ahead and hit the combat, guys. The French have a two modifier, a +2 modifier, one for Custine, and then we're going to put Kellerman up on the chopping block, and we're going to give Kellerman his subordinate bonus of 1. So the French have a net +2. This will mean we'll have to give Kellerman a leadership casualty check, which we'll cover in the post-combat situation. The Austrians, by comparison, have a +4. That is coming from, not the Austrians, the Prussians. Oh my goodness gracious, guys, I'm sorry. The Prussians have a +4. They have a +1 from Brunswick. They're going to get a lead assault bonus because they're using their cavalry as their lead unit for a +2. And then they have cavalry superiority, and that should be enough. Or artillery and cavalry superiority, I'm sorry. They have more artillery by 1, which gives them a +1. And then they have cavalry superiority. They have cavalry where the French have none. However, in woods, the maximum bonus for cavalry superiority is just a 1. So the French get a little bit of a benefit there. It'd otherwise be a +2. So that keeps it from being a +5 for the Prussians to being only a +4 for the Prussians. So Prussians are advantaged in this combat, both in terms of number of steps and the overall bonus, but the French, have a chance for victory. We'll go ahead and roll 2d6 for the Prussians, +4. Yikes. They got a 10, +4 is 14. That's a rough one. So 3-step losses and a leader check. So we'll have to take a look at that. The leader check, because it's on the 14 line, the Prussians are basically going to have 2 leader casualty checks. They're going to have a leader casualty. They're going to have a leader casualty. Oh my gosh, guys, on their subordinate leader, which we did not put him in for combat because he doesn't have a combat bonus, but it's going to protect Brunswick from being killed. So that's what they got. I'll go ahead and roll for the French now. So 14 for the Prussians. There's the only way that the French are going to win is if they manage to roll 2 6s, which they do not get. So they rolled a 7 plus 2 is 9. So they get a 1+ result. So we'll go ahead and take a step loss off of the lead cavalry unit of the Prussians. And then we're going to have to take, we'll take 3 step losses off of the French, and let's see, we had an infantry be the lead unit, didn't matter which infantry. So 1, we'll lose the detachment for 2, and then we'll take another step loss off that infantry for 3, which is going to leave the French with just a single infantry corps. And for the leader casualty check, so again, we're going to have 1 on the French, 1 on the Prussians. And leader casualty checks are pretty straightforward. Let me see if there's any reason why we wouldn't have one. All right, so the leader casualty table is right here. So we're going to roll a d6, and it's either going to be alive, wounded, or killed. For the Prussians, we'll roll first. So we're rolling for the subordinate Prussian cavalry leader. And we rolled a 3, so he is alive. So the Prussians got out clean. And then Kellerman, who was used as the subordinate leader bonus, will be rolled. And I roll a 1 for him, so he is alive. So that is it. So this was definitely a loss for the French. So they're going to have to do a morale check, and just to hit that, so we're going to have, it's going to be a 1d6. The morale of the force before we got started was a 4. So they have a 4 plus 1 is 5 for the primary leader. But the difference in combat losses, let's see, was 3 to 1, so 2 off of that. So the morale of the French is only a 3 at this point. So we'll roll a die. So if we roll greater than a 3 on a d6, the rest of the French force will be demoralized. I rolled a 3, which is just enough. So they're going to have to retreat. They at least retreat in good order, and we'll have them retreat to Metz, and Prussia moves into French territory here. It's a little hard to see where the national borders are at, but yeah, that is a hex in French territory. So Brunswick comes in. That's all his movement points, but he did achieve victory, and that's a good thing for them. We did not demoralize the French, but they've got their revolutionary zeal. So he is done. And then the final part of this is, do we move Esterhazy right now? And I think we do. I think we do want to move him up, because we don't want to, well, the French can't enter Baden until they achieve a victory, right? So and I still don't like, I still have not wanted to play Valmy yet. I guess I could have played Valmy here, but I keep wanting to hold on to it for something that's more dramatic, and maybe I should have done that for Dumouriez, but we'll see. I think I will activate Esterhazy, and we'll have him go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Wow. We'll just have him move down here. Well, yeah, they can't enter there until they win a victory. So we'll at least make sure that this path is covered, and then this gives us an opportunity to send Latour elsewhere when he can activate in the fall. And that's it. That's it for the coalition activations. Most of the forces on the map have been, all the decent ones, have now been activated, which means they're done for the turn. The whole rest of the turn. So this could be a problem. I could definitely see now where there's a note in the rulebook that says, yeah, you can have your opponent, if you're the initiative player, you can make the first chit played your opponent's chit. And I could see if you had the Brunswick Manifesto played first, you're effectively nullifying a French activation marker. So I think in hindsight, if I knew I was going to play this way, I would have the Brunswick Manifesto played at the beginning. The coalition would pick the French one marker or something to ensure that, like, the French one marker can't be played at all for anything useful. The French could still move stuff around internally, but they can't go on the offensive. So they're basically removing, one offensive impulse from the French and then letting the cup decide. So maybe I've misplayed this a little bit, but I mean, the coalitions won every combat that they had this turn, so that's got to be a good thing, and they're not fighting in their own territory, so we'll call that a goodness. So that's it for that activation. So now we're just going to go to the cup, and we'll look to draw actions from the cup, and then I do want to validate that the activations, like, you can't have let's see, what is it? There's a limit. You can't have more than like 2 in a row or something. Trying to find it. Hold on, guys. Okay, yeah, I found it. The same side cannot be activated twice in a row with a land marker, and you ignore neutral markers for this rule. So we're going to pull a chit from the Impulse Cup, and it's going to have to be a French one. If we pull a coalition one, we'll put it back in the cup, basically. So it's really going to just matter which French marker we pull. So we're pulling one, and what did I get? It is the French Naval 1 marker. So let me... French Naval 1. Okay, so you might think, well, maybe not super valuable, because, what is Navy matters going, what does naval matter going to help here? The reality is probably not a whole lot. Probably not a whole lot. It is a question of, like, do we bother to put any of our fleets out? So the French have a fleet in Toulon, they have a fleet in Rochefort, they have a fleet in Brest, but I'm not sure there's anything for them to really do. They could, I guess, try to, like, navally transport one of these guys over here, but, like, there's a -3 to combats if you do a naval invasion. So I consider this kind of a dud. So we'll call it a dud. I truly do not see anything that the French can do with these other than to send some ships out of port into a sea zone, and even that doesn't seem super useful. I mean, well, maybe we do this. We'll put out some of our ships into some sea zones for protection. How about that? So when the coalition gets bigger, we will have ships out at sea, and maybe that'll be worthwhile. That'll just make it a little bit harder for, say, like, the British to jump on and blockade our ports, because they're going to have to get past the ships that are in the sea zone, I guess. We'll do that so it's not a complete waste of time. Now we're going to go back to the Chip Cup again. I could go in depth on the naval stuff in terms of how far can you move, but it doesn't seem super valuable to dig that deeply into it right now. We'll do that later. We'll pull... the next land marker still has to be a French one. So even though we pulled a French naval marker, the limitation on activations going back to back, we still have to pull a French land marker. So we'll pull the next ship, and we get neutral land. Now, here's a thing that doesn't get covered by the rules very well, which is that Spain is neutral, and the rule book says that when Spain is neutral and you need to move, neutral unplayed majors around, France controls Spain. So, technically, I think if France wanted to, they could say that we're going to activate these guys and we're going to send them away from the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That feels gamey and weird, and I'm not sure I want to do that right now. It just doesn't feel right. This feels like maybe a oversight with the War of the First Coalition, that when the neutral land marker comes up, the French can send the Spanish far away from the front. It doesn't feel right. So I'm going to implement a house rule here that during the War of the First Coalition scenario, the neutrals are not activated at all. And they don't move or activate. They don't do anything. That feels more right than not. Alternatively, you could say that because Britain and her allies and Spain are going to eventually join the coalition should control these neutral major powers and get them into a better position for when they enter. But I don't see there being very many moves to make. So we're just going to move past the neutral land marker. Because it was a neutral marker, the next land marker besides neutral still has to be French. So we're just kind of getting through a lot of quick shits here, guys. Okay, at last we get the French, Empire Land 2 marker. So what this means, again, is any French leader with a 2 activation or higher can activate and move. But this means that units like this guy who are by himself with no leader still cannot activate. But generally, most everybody else will be able to activate, and we'll have to decide what we want to do and where we're going to want to go. So let me I'm going to take a little bit to kind of review the situation and figure out where these guys are going to go, what they're going to do. Okay, with the French activation, I think we've got a few obvious moves that we need to try to make. First is we're going to have Dagobert activate, and he's going to move from Toulouse to, Perpignan, to co-locate these guys here. So he can move. He will then be in a stack with 2 reduced infantry, and I believe that we can do some absorption, which is something we've not done before. It's a little bit of an oddball mechanic, so I would definitely say, if you're following along, review the rules about absorption and integration. Now, this is covered in the Banania rules in section 17, which is around activations. So absorption, rather than integration. Integration means that one stack is incorporated with another. Absorption involves the transference of steps. So absorption only ever involves combat units. It means combat units in the absorbed force are disbanded, meaning they return to the force pool, and their combat steps being distributed among reduced corps of the absorbing force to replenish those corps to full strength. They have to be, let's see. There doesn't seem to be any restrictions here, so just to show for us down here in Perpignan what this is, we have two reduced corps, infantry corps, that are in the same location. So we're going to take a step from the 8th or the 7th Corps and flip one or the other. Let's see if there's a difference. There really is not a difference, so we'll go ahead and stick with the 7th. So the 8th Corps is removed from the map, and the 7th Corps is restored. Now, what's the difference between two reduced corps and one full strength corps? Well, it's still two steps, right? If we had not done this integration, or absorption rather, we'd still have two combat steps if these guys fought against the Spanish when the time comes. But by combining them, our combat bonus remains the same, even though the French still do not have access to it. But you can see we gain an artillery point. So it's kind of a little weird shuffling around where you can squeeze a little of effectiveness out of your units by flipping the right ones. So by doing this integration, the 7th Corps is restored to full strength, the reduced corps, 8th Corps is gone, but we gain an artillery out of it. So this is a net benefit to do. So now Dagobert down here in Perpignan has, I'm sure I'm butchering that name by the way, but no matter, still has two steps, but now has artillery to defend, which is good. And his whole stack has their activation over. So he is complete. The next thing that I think that we will look to do is, let's see, I don't want to move this guy because while he does have some militia, this is the area where we can get some rebels, and I don't want to totally vacate these important locations, so I may leave that there. What I want to do is figure out what do I want to do in the southern department. So do we send Anselme against Nice? I think it's a dangerous proposition. I think it's a dangerous proposition, but I think we could successfully do it. But meanwhile, we have Montesquieu. Now, this is going to be, we'll have an opportunity to move Montesquieu again if we get the Empire Land 1 marker. So we don't actually have to do anything with him yet, so we can wait. He'll have a chance to activate again. Do we want to send these guys against the detachment? This is tough because then we're leaving Toulon empty, but it's probably worth a shot. So let's give it a try. We're going to take Anselme with his detachment and a crappy militia, and we'll go 1-2 to Nice. I think we're going to have the Piedmontese detachment stay inside. Well, I don't know. This is 3 steps to 1, so we're almost assuredly going to crush them. So we might as well. In a weird case, I'll have these guys hide in the fort. So this will be 1. I don't know if this counts as 2 movement or not. It feels like it probably ought to be 2 movement points. But Nice is kind of on the coast, so you would think we'd go 1-2. So maybe it's just 2 movement points to get to Nice, and then we're going to do a siege combat. The only bonus that the French are going to get is a siege modifier of +1 for the combat differential of the leader. And I'm pretty sure that's it. So we'll roll 2d6 on the Fortress 1 column, and we'll see what we got. I rolled well. I got a 9 +1 is 10. So 10 is an assault, So standard 1 round land combat or land battle. The fortress surrenders if it's demoralized. So we have 1 step for the detachment, 1 step for the fortress. So that's 2 combat steps versus 3. As we've done in other combats, what that means for the French is that they get a +1. The Piedmontese don't get any bonus there. The Piedmontese will get a +1 bonus for, I want to say artillery. I'm trying to see if it matters. I think artillery still matters in these situations where it's a siege assault. So they have a +1 for artillery, and then the lead unit for the French will be the detachment, which is a 0. The lead unit for the Piedmontese, I guess, has to be the detachment. So 0-0 there. The combat bonus of the leader gives the French 1. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that matters here. Combat leader, combat bonus, artillery, we did that. Cavalry doesn't matter here, and wouldn't in an assault, I don't believe. Double check the rules on that. So yeah, that is just going to be, so it's a +2 to the attacker, 1 for the leader, 1 for odds, a +2 for the attacker, +1 for the Piedmontese for artillery, and we're rolling on the siege skirmish combat table. So 2d6 for the French, +2. They got an 8, which is a 0, and the Piedmontese roll a 6 +1, which is a 7, which is 0. So standard 1-round land battle. So it's 1 round. So that was effectively a failure. And I wonder if the French actually get an addition to their marker. I'm trying to see how that is going to work. I don't think I saw something that was explicit about that. Let's see, assault. So we do increase the siege duration. Okay, that's what there's a note in the rules for this. So that was a failure. So we went 1, 2. We did not have a successful attempt. So that was 3 movement points lost. We'll use a 4th movement point to try again. So this is where, oops, I don't mean to have a +3 marker there. Jeez, these guys. It's a +1 marker. So we're going to go again by spending more movement points, which we can do. So now we will have spent, we spent 3, we're going to spend another 1. So we will have spent 4. We're going to roll again. This time the 2d6 on the siege table will have a +2, 1 for the leader, 1 for siege duration. And this time I rolled a 10. +2 is 12 on Fortress 1's Honors of War. So this detachment is going to get to come back in the spring of next year. And then the force surrenders. And let's see, what do I want to do with that? We are going to need Nice to be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think what we'll do is we will spend a point of militia strength point here. And I guess then the detachment's going to go away and we're going to have a crappy militia here. when they do, the detachment can't be there, I don't think, if you can restore a step loss. But we are going to restore Nice under French control, and we'll put a blue disc control marker here to help denote that it's been reactivated and the French control it. I guess Ensemble being there is enough to show that we control it, but he may move in the future, so we'll just make sure we remember that. So that's goodness for these guys. So their activation is over for the turn, no forced march. So a little bit of a gain. And then what else do we want to do with the French? Well, again, I think I'm going to keep Montesquieu. I'm going to have him wait. And then I'm going to have these guys wait. And it's going to be now, what do we do about the main front? Here's what I think we're going to try. We're going to have Dumouriez grab Luckner and the guys in Paris, and we're going to take them up to attack the Austrians there at Lille. And we're going to try to get Custine and Biron together to attack Brunswick and hopefully achieve some level of victory. We've got to push back. We've got to try. And if we get lucky, I mean, we're kind of banking on luck, unfortunately, but we need to try to disrupt these guys and figure out a way to come back and contest Clarfate there in the central position. It's not good because we're having to get pushed back so much, but I think we've got to try to do it. Okay, to handle this situation, we're going to have Dumouriez move 1 hex down to Paris, another movement point to integrate Luckner's force here. So now we have this combined stack in Paris for the moment. So 1, 2 to integrate, 3, 4, 5 to move into Teschen's hex. Now, I'm not sure that Teschen would want to try to intercept here. I don't think he'd be very good at it either way. So let's see. He's got engineers. He's got infantry. He does have cavalry. So he could try to intercept. Would it be an advantage for him to do so? I do think that would be the case because he would be still, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think he would still be in supply. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, he would be if he tried to intercept. So let's see if Teschen can intercept successfully into this hex here. So as we look at the interception, again, 2d6. He does have cavalry. The initiatives are the same. So let's see if he gets it. He does not intercept. So then they come to attack. And I don't think he would want to avoid combat. He wants to hold where he's at. Retreating is not going to do anything better for them. On the other hand, he could retreat to Flanders, back into Flanders, and maybe get away. And oh boy, it's tough. It's tough to figure out, is that the right move? If he were to do that, he would get a pretty good roll. He'd have his initiative of 3 plus light cavalry present, so he'd have a +4 to the die roll. And let's see, they moved 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they'd be pretty much out of movement points. So he would be at disadvantage where the French are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps with an extra leader that can provide a bonus to 3 steps. So I think that ends up coming out to be 2 to 1. So yeah, he might try to actually avoid. So we'll roll that, and he actually gets it. I rolled boxcars. see if there's any other considerations. No, so he's going to avoid combat back into Flanders, which technically the French cannot enter right now, and they'd have one more movement point. And I think that's really it. They're not going to be able to rebuild the fort. They're going to wait until the production phase of the next year. But I think they've done as good as they can go there. The only other thing that they could try to do maybe is, well, no, that's it. So, okay, Dumouriez tried to grab some guys and assault Teschen's force. Teschen can still avoid combat even if he has an activation over marker, because it's just being able to move as a reaction to combat. I don't believe the activation level has any impact there. So that was a sort of a tactical retreat here, and the French lose an opportunity to beat the Austrians, and that activation is over. One quick side tangent before we start talking about the Brunswick situation is Argenteau will still be able to activate on the Austrian side. And if you watch carefully, this guy could go, this is a clear hex, by the way, 1, 2, 3. This guy's probably going to fail interception. 4, 5, 6 into Paris. And that, we vacated it to fend off Teschen, but here's the thing. It wouldn't be critically awful to lose Paris. It would be bad, don't get me wrong, but it's not the end of the game. The Allies, the coalition would have to take either Bordeaux or Lyon for it to be a conquer situation, and the French get knocked out and lose the game. So it's not that easy. You can't just checkmate, waltz one corps into Paris. But I also don't want to have to fight, to liberate Paris from across a river line. So I think, going to pull this guy back to Paris. We still have a fortress there that the coalition has to deal with one way or another. But we want to make sure that this is not an easy, quick grab by any particular force. And so we are going to pull these guys back, and they're going to be done with their activation. I'll put the marker on them. We do not want to lose Paris. And it's really less about Paris being the capital, even though there are game concerns for that. It wouldn't be an immediate loss at the end of the turn if France lost control of Paris. But having units operating that deeply in the line kind of throws us off weight. Now, that force would probably not be in supply coming in here, but we still would have to peel off other units to get them out of there. And it just means that the sort of bubble defense of our secure perimeter of the French armies all of a sudden has a twist in it, and we're trying to undo the twist, and then the rest of our perimeter gets basically penetrated because of it, and it just seems like a doom spiral situation. So for that reason, I'm pulling back a corps back to Paris, for better or for worse, but there you go. And then maybe we pull up, when we get our one draw, we pull the detachment up or something like that. I think detachments can move by themselves. I'll have to double check that, but I'm pretty certain they can. So want to get these guys up here as well, or maybe we move them up here. We'll have some options, but the point is I want to make sure we don't get something sneaky going on. And then looking at the Brunswick situation over here. So here's the thing. If we try to activate Biron or something and move him over here and end his activation and say, we'll wait to another land marker to activate Custine with a combined stack and attack, we actually can't do that, because once these guys integrate, they're going to inherit the activation over marker that Biron will have. So if we're going to contest Brunswick, we will need to activate one of our leaders, probably Custine, since he's the better one with the combat modifier. Try to get him over to Strasbourg and hope he doesn't get intercepted. And I doubt that he would get intercepted, but it's possible. pick up Biron, and then they would move to attack Brunswick. And it would be a pretty even match, probably, with their combined stacks. We might have to have Biron or another leader um, get dismissed because we'd be overstacked for leaders without an army marker, but I think that's probably worthwhile because if we're not careful, again, Brunswick has a central position. He can pick either or and crush them, and the problem we'll deal with next turn is that we have some Austrian forces that can focus on Biron. Brunswick can push Custine out of the way, and they've got yet another path west to Paris that would be hard to dislodge. Or he could swing down, take Dijon, and then have a good central position in France. So the French must do something. They must contest Brunswick. So we're going to go for a maneuver to conjoin forces and then concentrate doing that. So we will activate, I think, Custine. We will have him move 1, 2 here. And this is where Brunswick could try to intercept. He does have cavalry, but the movement cost to enter the interception hex is 2 or more. So that's kind of nullified. And I don't believe any other things will factor in. So he could try to intercept, but I think it is likely he will not be able to do so. And yeah, he fails to intercept. So we will have these guys moved into here. I think what we'll do is we'll have Biron taken off and sent back to the leader pool. And we'll have our stack here. So we've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we actually don't have enough to go attack Brunswick like this. So maybe we shouldn't be doing this. We might have to do it the other way, which is worrisome, and I'm not sure I like doing it that way. So let's just say that this stack came over, integrated the force. So instead it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6 to do the combat. But can we keep Custine as the leader? Let me check the rules on this, because I think we still want Custine as our leader, even if Biron is the starting activating leader. I'm gonna have to see if we can do a swap out. Okay, so I think I figured out how this is going to work. Biron is the activated force, and he has enough movement points to go to 1, 2, 3, 4, pick up the stack, 5, 6 to attack into the woods here. And it's basically one attack, and that's all we're going to get. But the thing is, because this is my interpretation of the rule, because Biron is the activating leader, he can't drop out and continue having the activation forwarded on by Custine. And again, we can't stop here because the two forces will have to integrate, and the unactivated Custine stack will inherit the activation level of Biron's units, which will be end of activation functionally, or end of first activation, but no one can do a forced march, so it's really the end of activation. So we have to do a couple of things. One is we had to take Custine off map because he's the inactive leader, and the way I see this is he's going to have to go away. So he goes back to the leader pool. So we will have Biron with a subordinate 2-star leader of Kellerman as the stack to go fight Brunswick. Now, the one thing I guess we'll be able to do is, I think if Biron loses this battle, we can potentially relieve him of command and replace him with Custine as our guy to pick. So it's very much a weird situation of, hey, Biron has the order to come get forces and lead the charge, and when he fails to do well, Custine will say, "You should have let me do it," and he'll take over. So that's what we've got for that. Um, and then we can actually start talking about the actual combat. So the French have, just want to double check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 steps of units with cavalry. And the Prussians have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps with cavalry. So both have cavalry. Um, and Brunswick has a backup leader, but well, that's just as good as it's going to get. So these guys are certainly going to try to attack Brunswick. Now the question is, will Brunswick try to avoid combat? I think Brunswick must be thinking he's probably got a good shot at winning, or it's awfully even, and so I think he's willing to stand and fight. I think that's just got to be the situation here. The other thing is, because this stack is moving in across a bridge, the French are going to have a -1 to their die roll modifier. So I think, yeah, Brunswick wants to stay here. It's a good position. The French are making a gamble play to try to push the Prussians back and to deal some damage to them. So kind of a tough spot. Kind of a tough spot. So what we're going to have here is, as we go to count up our die roll modifiers, so the terrain is going to be a -1 for the French and the attacker. They're going to put Kellerman in, so that leaves them with a net 0. And it doesn't really matter who their lead unit is because all the French units have a 0, so that's as good as it's going to get. So no lead assault modifier. How much artillery do they have? Well, they have 1, 2 artillery and 1 cavalry step. The Prussians have 2 artillery and 1 cavalry step. So it's even from all those perspectives, which is rather interesting. But Brunswick will have a +1 for his leader. So I want to say that the French basically have no die roll modifier for this, which is a little tricky. We are dealing with a minor combat, a minor battle. But they're basically stuck in a situation with, it's a minor battle. They've got no die roll modifier. None of the other ones seem to matter. And our leader, Kellerman, is going to have to take a leadership check or a casualty check. The Prussians are going to use, I think, one of their infantry as the lead assault unit just because they don't want to lose a cavalry advantage or, lose cavalry. So they're going to have a 0. So just because of that bridge, the Prussians have a slight advantage. So the Prussians having the advantage, I think this is still worth the shot. So the French will roll. This is just going to be a 2d6 straight up on the minor battle column. And they only scored a 6, which is going to be worth 1 step loss. The Prussians actually roll worse. And so they rolled a 3 plus 1 is 4, which is a 1-0, or I'm sorry, it's a 0+. Wow. Okay. So yeah, the Prussians got a 4. That's only a 0. The French got a 6, which is a 1. So no step loss to the French, thank goodness. And the Prussians lose a step from one of their infantry, which means they're going to have an artillery problem. And now they've got to retreat. I think they can retreat safely back here. And the French win the day. And let's see, do we have to advance after combat in this game? Because I could see a situation where they would probably rather not, in all actuality. Well, I guess they're already in the hex. The battle happens in the hex, so they are in there in this game. Okay, so they did lose. I think we do. I forgot. There's a demoralization check that we need to do. So the French will come up to here. Now the morale for the Prussians was, let's see, 4, 3 was 3 plus 1 for Brunswick's combat ability is 4. Then let's see. The overall commander was not killed. Difference between the losses was 1. So it's 3 is a 4. Back down to 3. We're going to roll a die. All right. So it looks like the Prussians are going to be demoralized. So make sure I get this right. 3 plus 1 is 4. Minus 1 for the differential of loss is a 3. I rolled a 4. So if we rolled greater than their force morale, then they will be demoralized. So we're going to stick one of these guys on here. The demoralization markers. His action is over, and then do we have a cavalry pursuit? If there are surviving cavalry on the winning side, it can pursue the defeated demoralized units. This is abstract, so the French have cavalry left. They didn't use it as an assault unit. The Prussians didn't do theirs either, but okay, so we lose 1 step for each pursuing light cavalry point. So there's 1 more step loss, and the Prussians pick where to lose that. So I think they're going to eliminate the reduced infantry corps of theirs. So this leaves them with 3 steps now on the retreat, and let's see, nothing else happens. Okay, so boy, that's a bummer. I think we'll have him retreat to Mons, and then these guys are in the hex. They managed to do that. Now that took, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they're really out of movement points now, and we'll mark that with an activation over. Important thing that just happened, though, is the French have won a victory, their first victory, which nullifies our Brunswick Manifesto. So that is over with now. And we still have our Valmy card, believe it or not. We've held on to that. And we're done with our major activations. So let me see what else we can do here. So this has the potential to be a very long video, but we can probably get through the rest of the impulses very quickly because so many units have already activated that the rest of these chits are going to go by very, very quickly, I think. So the big question was whether or not we were going to do anything with Montesquieu. I think given the events that have gone over here, what I may want to do is move him up to a different position in the north. So we thought maybe we could send him down over here, but I'm a little cautious of that. I either want to move him up to here or send him south.
I'm still not sure, unfortunately. So I think I can split the difference a little bit and leave an infantry behind and move him up to Dijon. So at least there's a way, like I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and have some more coverage here, and maybe that would be better. Um, 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like we need to put him in a good position. So next turn, he could then go up, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and contest the Austrians. Now this stack here is, let's see, it's a train, 1, 2, 3, only 3 steps. And by comparison, he's operating right now with 4 steps. So I think if we just move him up to Dijon, we leave something in Lyon so that Coley can't get too frisky or something and try to work his way up here. And if he does, we'd have this guy further south to sort of contest it. So I think we're okay to leave one guy behind here. And when we get reinforcements eventually, we'll build up a force here. But we'll move him to Dijon, and that will allow him a little more flexibility to either come up and oppose this stack. We could just move up to here, but I don't want to give the Austrians too much freedom to move their way through Neufchâtel and strike Dijon. Like this guy could start working his way down through here, and I don't want that. I want some coverage. So I think that's probably the better move. We can't declare war on Geneva, so we kind of have to go around. So it's like we could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and be next to Neufchâtel, but I think this is the better move here, more precautionary move. He's got flexibility going into next turn. So we'll do that, and his activation will be over. We were going to save it, but I think the rest of these activations are going to go by really quick. So that's it for the Empire Land 2 marker. Again, a lot of 3 leaders that we chose to go now. We'll go back to the cup and see what else comes out. We pull Coalition Land 2, which means any other stacks with a leader of a 2 value can now go. There's really only 2 or higher, I guess. So we could do something with Coley. I think Coley's fine to wait till more reinforcements. And then alternatively, we've got Blankenstein, and he can get moving, and I think we will try to get him going. Maybe we'll do, okay, 6 movement points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or maybe it'd be better to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then he's supporting further south. I think we like that better. So he's done, right? And then we also have Argento here. And I think what we will want to do with him, since he's just a leader with 2 steps, and we can't just walk into Paris like a jerk, he's going to reinforce Teschen, who has suffered some losses. So he's going to activate, and he's just going to come in here and join up. And then this is our opportunity, do we want to make any other changes to the stacking? No integration changes seem to make sense to me. So we'll just very quickly get him done and over with and reinforce as a support. Pretty straightforward, easy move to make for that purpose. Just make it so that Teschen's got a little bit more. And just to make sure I got the stacking right, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. So he's still good for stacking, and he can have a subordinate leader. So this just gives the Austrians a little bit more support in that main drive against Dumouriez. Okay, and I think that's it for those activations. Again, there's not as many stacks now left to activate. We'll go to the Cup, and we get Coalition Naval 1. Right now, there's not many naval forces that are going to matter here, so we're going to move on past that. Then we got Coalition Land 1. So Coalition Land 1 is important because it means all the independent units can move, and we'll certainly want to do that. So, do we move the detachment down south? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, I don't think we want to move him, so he'll stay put. And then in the north we have this guy, and I think we will move him, start moving him towards the demoralized Prussians, since this is a Prussian allied unit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and he will be done activating. This small detachment, and then nothing else can activate there. Everything else that could have been activated really has been. So we go back to the Cup again. See, now it goes really fast because we've gotten the majority of our stuff activated. And to be honest, I actually probably shouldn't have been able to make that move. My bad. I think that needed to be a French marker. I think I'm going to let it slide just because none of those moves made any major difference. So we'll have, nope, not that one. Okay, so now we have the Empire Land 1, and so I broke the rules a little bit, but I'm going to let it slide because I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. Are there any are there any single unit steps that we want to move around? I think we do, and we've got a couple different options here. We can either get a detachment. We can try to move up and do some absorption with Dumouriez, and I think we might do that. I think that's just the better move, to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then get absorbed into Dumouriez's stack. We leave this open, but I'm not too worried about that. If the Austrians want to dive down through here, I mean, they can try, but I think that would be a bad choice. So we will. Well, I wonder, can we do that with militia? I feel like we can't, because a militia is a distinct unit type. Let me double check this. Okay, I had a double check. I don't think a line infantry unit can absorb a step from militia because they're different production types. So I think we will send this guy up into this stack, and he will get absorbed by Dumouriez, and one of his infantry corps with a step loss will be replenished to full strength, and basically more reinforcements for the French too. So things are heating up in this space. I think all the other situations where we've got a detachment, we've got a single unit holding a reasonably important location, especially over here, that's all fine. I don't think we need to move any other units. I don't think I want to move a unit off of Boulogne given the straits to Britain. We'll keep something there for now. So I think that's it for the French. So we'll go back. We could assume then the British Land 1. It's not the British. It's red, so I think Britain. Coalition marker comes up, and we do the 1. Then we pull up the next chit. Empire Land 3. I don't think there's much more that we want to do. So we could pull that chit and say nothing happens. And then what are the rest of the chits even in the cup at this point. Neutral naval doesn't matter unless we want to have the British Navy change its situation, and I think they're fine for the moment. Empire Land 4, Coalition Land 4. Are there any other activations that could be made by anybody of importance at this point? None that they want to make. So I think we can call that the end of the activations phase. So with the activation phase over, we're going to have to look at so this is a sequence of play. Activation phase is over. Now we have a final attrition phase. Is anybody truly out of supply at this point? No, I don't think so. But now we need to look at final attrition for demoralized units. So I think we certainly had, okay, then remove demoralized from the demoralized units. Oh, winter only. Okay. Interesting. So, boy, Brunswick's got a problem here. He needs to rally. So let's see. Then remove demoralized markers, winter only from demoralized units. Starting the following winter after the unit has been demoralized. So it's not winter yet. They're still demoralized. Let's do our attrition check. Let's see. Okay, attrition check. Okay, so what are the modifiers for the attrition check? This is going to be a 2d6 die roll like most. Again, we're talking about the demoralized Prussian force here. The force is spent for movement points or less. No. All movement was no. We're not. I don't think we're going to spend a depot. It's not winter. Oh, okay. So a demoralized force is a +3. And really no other modifiers matter. So it's a +3 right now. I don't like that. That feels rough. And let's see what the attrition table is. All right. How many SPs do these guys have? Well, he has 1, 2, 3. He's only got 3 steps. My goodness. I think we're okay to not spend his train on this one. So we're going to have 2d6 +2 for them being demoralized. We'll just let that die roll be what it is. As soon as I find my dice, that seemingly vanished. Oh, in my pocket. All right, 2d6 +3. Rolled a 5. +3 is 8. 8 is a 0, so the lower number of steps you have, the less likely you're actually going to have attrition. So, fortunately, they managed to avoid the attrition for this, but they remain demoralized for now. So there we go. I think that's the only other attrition we really need to worry about. And then we have the conquest and peace phase. So I want to say, let's see, there's no foreign wars. We can't create any new states or satellites. There's no exchanging of territory. No miners have been defeated yet. Piedmont is not conquered. So that's not really an issue. Piedmont still has its capital. Everything else is going to be pretty much the same. The only other thing would be if there's any alliance length. That's only the beginning of 1794. So I think we're at the end of the turn, guys. Victory phase, checked automatic victory. That's not relevant. Victory points we're not using. So I believe that's it, guys. That's the rest of the summer turn, we're going to start looking at the autumn turn in the next video. I know this video has been super long already, but you can generally see how things have gone. I think I can take off the activation markers at this point, I want to say, when it's over. Let's see if I can find when that is, or when we do that. But I think it's safe to peel these guys off. So as I'm doing that, let's just wrap up and review really quick. So the French have pushed into Genoa and have taken Nice. And that's really all for the Italian front. The coalition forces have pushed into France proper, but have been ultimately pushed back out, which is rather interesting. They're a bit disadvantaged in that there are still many stacks of coalition forces that have not yet entered the fray, but they're feeling at least pretty good. They did lose the fortress of Lille, which has been removed. They can rebuild that back, but they've managed to demoralize an army and win a minor battle. So at least it's a significant battle. But there's still a lot of tenuous positions here that the coalition could exploit, and the impulse marker pulls next turn could greatly affect how things go and just who can get where and how fast they can move and what goes on. The French are probably going to hold back on playing the Committee of Public Safety, because as soon as they do that, we're going to have, wherever that card is, the King of France executed, which is going to bring in Britain, and we don't want to do that until, well, we don't want to do it right away, because if we do it too early, then we're going to be fighting on too many fronts. We want to try to solidify our front before we totally overthrow the king, I guess, is my perspective on that. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I know it's really long videos. The nice thing is, as we continue to play through, I'm not going to show everything in as much detail. We're going to focus in on new mechanics, new situations that maybe hadn't come up before, but I'm going to start transitioning over time to covering the broad strokes. So talking about the movements of armies after they're already done moving, not showing you each and everything, but hopefully the previous video and this one gives you a taste for what can happen. Armies coming together, battles being fought, demoralization leading to cavalry pursuit, which can cause more step losses, the sieges that can go and be taken, but then you have to rebuild the fortresses. We've covered a lot of these operational mechanics, which means we can spend most of our time talking about the end results and all the new stuff that is still to come. There's still many rules we've not even gotten to, especially considering those that consider diplomacy and more events and a whole lot more, which we will cover in future videos. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Keep gaming.